Welcome to Money Market, a Bank of Tampa podcast. We highlight the businesses, expert business advice, the local economy, and points of interest in the Tampa Bay market. Follow us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And please share this episode with a friend or colleague. I'm your host, Owen Lefebvre, the Pinellas County Market President for the Bank of Tampa, Tampa Bay's oldest and largest community bank. Today, a local treat, if you will, Mike DiBrizzi, the CEO of Camelot Community Cares. Man, you do important and great work in our community. But Mike, can you tell us a little bit about your background and a little bit about Camelot?
Sure. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Thanks for having me here in a time. I'm looking forward to
Happy to have you.
Sharing this time with you and telling a little bit about our organization. A little bit about me. I've been living in the Tampa Bay area since 1988. I came up here to go to the University of Tampa and never left. Came up from Miami. You know, I've always been involved in service in some form or another, and in 1994 got a job with Camelot as a case manager and worked my way through there. Did different jobs and worked my way up and became a supervisor, then a director over a program, and just kind of worked my way through. And before I know it, in 2007, I was named CEO. Been my last and final job, and I kind of won the career lottery, so to speak. I got the best job ever, and impact people in the community, and know that I'm doing something to help thousands of children and families. And who can ask for more?
No,
that is the best thing you can ever want to do.
Well, and talk a little bit about what Camelot does.
So Camelot is a child welfare and behavioral health organization. And to boil that down is we work with primarily abused and neglected children, whether they are involved in child protection in their families, so if they've had an abuse report, or if they are in foster care, or if they're being adopted. We work with those families all over the state of Florida. And we also do behavioral health services. So we provide mental health and psychiatric services to children only in their home and school. We don't operate any buildings or facilities or residential treatments. We work with our families in their homes, in their schools, or in their community.
Okay. How did the organization get started? Because we're coming up on 50 years.
Yes.
We're past 50 years now.
We just finished our 50th year, so
okay.
we're still celebrating until we turn 51. But
hey, you got to milk this. Disney had their 50th anniversary.
That's right.
That was for 4 years, I think.
It's I'm a little older than the company, but it started as a family-run organization. A gentleman by the name of Dr. Jim Spicer formed it and started off as a school. And a school residential treatment, something that we're not now. And the program grew, and at one point he recognized that children are best served in their families. And I always like to joke that this was started in Illinois and Tennessee, and like most Midwesterners, they come to the Tampa Bay area, and they did. And they started the program here, and in 1999 they retired. And the company formed into a nonprofit at that point. And today we are one of the largest nonprofit child welfare organizations in the state. We operate all over Florida as well as in Ohio. Serve about 12 to 15,000 children and families every day.
That's amazing.
Over 1,000 employees, and it's a great organization. We do amazing stuff. We work with families and have great outcomes, and we know it every day that we're keeping kids safe. And there's just, like I said, no better job than that.
And you've kind of broadly talked about what the organization does, but can you get a little deeper into some of the key services that you provide, because it is pretty incredible? So
primarily foster care and adoption services. So we license foster homes all over the state of Florida, probably well over 500 foster homes. Wow. And I'm fortunate enough to be CEO of this organization, but they are amazing. To go through what we put them through to become foster parents. And then we intrude on their lives. We come into their home. We ask them to care for a child who's just gone through a terrible thing in their life. And they open their hearts, they open their homes, and they take in children, and they work with them and their families to reunify them. And they know that going into it, that's the job. Mm-hmm. And they're wonderful. if you know a foster parent, thank them. If you want to know more, if you want to meet one, let us know. We'll let you meet them. They're amazing, and everyone should. If you can't do it yourself, which it's not for everybody, but you should support foster parents in some form or fashion.
Do you have any success stories that, I only can imagine. That's 12,000 kids a year? Yeah.
So just in Hillsborough County, we have been responsible for over 4,000 adoptions.
Wow.
Just in the work that we do. It goes back a while, but I think about that quite often, that there are over 4,000 children in this community that have found a forever home.
That's incredible.
Or forever family, because of the work that we did. And, we hear about it. We they keep in touch. And one of the great stories about that is we have a board member that was an adoptive parent. And right after she finalized her adoption, she called me up and said, "Hey, I just went through the adoption process with you. It was great, and but I want to become a board member." Wow. And so she comes onto the board, and her first meeting, you'd think that she'd want to take it in a little bit and figure out what's going on, but she comes in a meeting and sits down and says, "All right, now we need to start a post-adoption support program."
Wow. Okay. Well, she's got great perspective, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. She's right on there. And at the time, there unfortunately there was not a lot of programs like that would support families once the adoption process happened. So it took.
That's one of those things that it now that you say it,
Mm-hmm.
like it seems obvious, but when you're in the moment, you kind of think like, okay, we've done our job.
Yeah.
Mission accomplished. Best of luck. But
yeah, kind of, and but it's also one of those restrictions of what child welfare and because it's driven by state statute. So state statute says that when they're not in child welfare anymore, they're free. Right. These are families that don't need to have or shouldn't have anybody intruding on their lives, and I get that, I understand that, but the system has come to learn that it doesn't end at the adoption process, and it really almost as a restart. So we took a couple years. We gathered some community support, and eventually we got the program funded. It's been going now for 7 years, and it is an amazing program. Real small program that we have, but one of the most impactful.
So what does that look like? What are the services provided?
So we have support groups. We were doing them live before the pandemic, and then when the pandemic, we had to pivot like everybody else to an online. And the online one's grown to be very successful. We do support for families. They'll call us up and say, "I need this," or "How do I access this?" And the insurance is changing. What do I do? And those kinds of things. But most important, we have a extremely effective trauma-informed clinical services that go in and work with these families when children are still healing from the trauma of what happened to them that led them into the foster care system in the first place. And just because they've been adopted doesn't mean that trauma ends or they've healed from it. And sometimes the adoption process itself can be traumatic, even though the child is grateful and happy to be there. They're being asked basically to separate from their biological family.
Sure, very traumatic.
And so this team is wonderful, and they've kept countless adoptive families together, and prevented kids from having another removal and come back into foster care.
Yeah, that would be heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the biggest challenges facing child welfare in Florida right now?
The number one reason why children come to our attention is still substance abuse. And we still have the traditional, you hear about abuse and neglect, and but that is the number one challenge for families. And as you can imagine, it's hard to safely raise a child in a home with parents who are dealing with substance abuse to that level where it requires significant treatment. And we've come a long way in terms of stigma around mental health and substance abuse, which has been great, but I don't think it's reached the level of families who are challenged, whether it be economically or socially, for the working class or executive class, movie stars. It's an
Runs the full gamut, right?
It's accepted now. Oh, and good. I think that's wonderful. But there's still a stigma of a family that may be going through an economic challenge that is struggling with substance abuse. So as we move forward, that will get better. But that is hard. It's a lifetime disease. So if a child is removed because of the substance abuse, it's difficult to reunify because it takes a long time for that parent or parents to get to a place where they can safely have the child in their home. So that causes lengths of stay to be high and things like that. But the other challenge is always funding from the community, funding from the state, and dealing with, we deal with families at the worst point in their lives.
Right.
So just that alone is the challenge. And and Florida's unique. I think we're going to get to that in a little bit, but our system is, faces those challenges head on. We have wonderful outcomes, and we're always dealing with trying to be the best. And unfortunately, the things that we have to deal with don't stop: substance abuse and domestic violence and other family challenges and social challenges that we deal with every day.
Well, hard things, and that's one of those things where I think a lot of people just, from ego and pride, don't want to reach out, admit they have an issue, and that's, the first step is getting them to take that step. But that's a tough one to take.
You have to imagine, your family's at the most challenging point in their life, and a child abuse investigator comes knocking on the door, and you're potentially facing losing your child. And, I've seen it. I've never been through it, thankfully. But, I've seen what that does to a family. And I've seen what it does to a child, whether it be 2-year-old or 17 years old. It's extremely traumatic. And we focus so much and this is the thing that maybe folks don't understand about foster care. Foster care itself is the smallest portion of child welfare. Okay. Most of our work is done keeping children with their family. So a tremendous amount of resources is put towards what services can we put in that home so that the child can stay there. And we do a great job of it.
So what does that look like? Tell me.
So it could be everything from someone who's coming in and working with mom or dad or both to, whether an economic challenge, okay, do we need to, help them out a little bit, because paying the electric bill is a lot cheaper than placing them in foster care. Whether it's substance abuse, so we can, we'll have peer supports that can go into the home and help them through their recovery journey. It could be someone that's just, helping them get through a challenge in their life. Sometimes it could be an abusive person that's in the home, and we have to help them, transition from an abusive person. So, in the worst of situations, safety is kind of like the barrier there. So if the child can safely stay there with support, whether it's counselors or
the minimum standard,
support coming in, and we use a lot of, we'll find what we call safety support. So if it's a neighbor, an aunt, an uncle, or somebody else that can come in and check on the family and be part of the overall team that's keeping that child safe, then that's our best outcome. But safety is the line. So if the child is unsafe, then we need to place the child out of the home. The first place we look is a relative. That is number one.
Knows the family.
Knows the family, and then or if it's close friends or teachers, churches, whatever it may be. But the last resort is to place the child into the foster care system, and it is the smallest population of children that we work with.
Okay. Is there anything that's innovative that's happening in that space right now?
The entire system itself. Florida is very unique. Florida, so
in a lot of ways.
In a lot of ways,
okay,
yeah. But this one's a good one.
Okay, good.
People think foster care, they think the state. They think, big facilities and group homes and stuff like that. Florida's foster care system and its entire child welfare system is run by community nonprofits. The state doesn't operate the system. And Florida's one of the few states in the country that's been doing it, and we've been doing it the longest. And it has been massively successful. We are number one in the country in all the important categories for large states: California, New York, Texas, Illinois, the big states that have large systems like this. And it is, so when we talk foster care to the community, it's the community that's doing it. It's not the state. It's not government that's knocking on your door. It's here to help. These are local agencies, and we call it community-based care. And it's called that for a reason, because it is the localized community that is operating the system. And all the communities around the state look a little bit different. The system here in Hillsborough County looks completely different than the system that is operating up in Gainesville and Alachua County. There are some similarities in terms of what rules are, but at the end of the day, how that system manages is built to meet the specific needs of that community versus a Tallahassee-run system by the state that would, it's the state, and so by nature, wants to treat the state as one. Is
that driven by or pushed down by on a county level, or is that just they're pushing it down to, the private?
It's mostly county. The real boundaries are circuit courts.
Okay.
So Hillsborough is its own circuit. Pinellas Pasco is a circuit. Polk, Hardy Highlands is a circuit. So, it follows the court system. So it still is community, and a lot of those circuits are joined. They have similarities. So, and that's how it breaks down across the state.
So, it sounds like it works more efficiently, but is that just because, government isn't always, in most cases, is the least efficient option, and actually just pushing it down to the local providers, the nonprofits, the community. You think that's a differentiator?
It is efficient, but it's the real key is the effectiveness. Anybody who thinks they can do it cheaper, that's really that's not a realistic expectation, because in private sector that's probably the case, but do we really want to skimp on? Do we want to try to find an agency that works with children and families to do it the cheapest they can?
Right. Yeah.
So you want to be able to maximize. You want to be able to maximize funding. But it's effectiveness. When for instance, when in a year, I mentioned adoptions, and this number is going to sound similar, but prior to this system converting to a community system, there were about 1,000 or so adoptions done every year. Now that number goes anywhere between 3,500 to 4,500 adoptions across the state every year.
Well,
the number of children involved in child welfare at the time was approaching 40,000. Now it's less than 20,000.
Interesting. Okay.
So it is efficient in terms of effectiveness, but we don't go after putting out and say, okay, who's going to do this for the cheapest?
Well, I guess the job is to eventually, or the goal is to work yourself out of business, right?
Yeah, of cource that's that's aspirational, of course, but
sure.
We also know, but the real job is is really kind of twofold: keep children safe. So we want to reduce or to the point of almost elimination of abuse in the community. But most important, keeping kids with their family. Mm-hmm. If they're involved in our system, what are we doing to keep that child with the family? And if they're removed, how quickly are we able to reunify them? And if we can't reunify them because their family situation is just so challenged, then how quickly can we transition to a permanent family through adoption or through guardianship or something else?
Got it. Okay. You had mentioned 1,000 employees, but there's also a partnership with the community and with volunteers. What does that look like? It takes a village, right?
Yep. So, we do fundraise. We have lots of wonderful partners, including you all. But
Thank you.
We fundraise for the things that the state doesn't pay for. So we receive funding from the state, and that is to provide the primary basic level of what we have to do. License that foster home, but there isn't funding to support that foster home. So what are we doing to help those parents through training, through other opportunities, through respite, through other resources we can provide them? Same thing for our staff. One of our programs works with kids who turn 18 in foster care. What are we? What is the community? The community supports us to provide life skills training and financial literacy training for our graduates, preparing them for college, preparing them for job training, mentoring. So when the community supports us to provide the extra that
the gaps
right, that the state doesn't provide, and the state doesn't have to, and that is why when you talk about innovation, that is what this system is supposed to do.
Sure.
So ask a donor, do they want to donate to the state of Florida? They're probably going to say no. Ask them if they want to donate to a community-based organization that's in their backyard, that is effective and keeps them involved, and they can see the end result. They know that their donation went right to their community. Much easier to do.
Yeah, well, and go into a good cause, and you can track it. And being, I guess, primarily, is it fair to say, like primarily government funded?
Yeah, and so the child welfare system, the state of Florida is required to fund a child welfare system. So they have to have a foster care system. They have to have all the pieces that go with it. The state has chosen to let nonprofits operate those across the community, but they still have to provide the funding for the basic part of it.
Okay.
So there are about 100 or so organizations around the state that kind of manage this system and work with the children involved in child welfare or behavioral health. But we would never be able to do it without community support. Foster parents to become foster parents, donors and volunteers who come in and help with training, organizations and whether community-based or private that come in and support the work that we do, whether it be through sharing the message, whether it be contributing directly to it, whether it be supporting events that we have. We would not be able to be successful without the work of those organizations.
Well, let's talk about some of those events, because we are a proud sponsor of your annual golf tournament.
Yes, you are. The Bank of Tampa has been a proud sponsor since the beginning, and I am biased. Of course, it is the most fun tournament you'll ever want to go to, whether you play or not. But it does support our Tampa Bay programs and helps. I mentioned our program for youth who turn 18 in foster care. That's one of the primary funding sources for those college tours and for those job training programs that we do. We have one of the fun parts of that program is something called our Youth Advisory Board, which is a group of young people that are still in foster care or have just turned 18 in foster care or 19, and we still support them. And they're kind of our governing body of that program. They love to tell us what they need and how we should operate our program. This is an old story, but we had our location that was over in Ybor for a while. It was a single, some of the Victorian houses that are offices
Sure,
over there.
yeah.
We had one of those types of houses for the office. And like any good organization, we want to put our big sign out front and market ourselves. And the young people were like, nope. You can put the address out there so people can find it, but we don't want it to say foster care. We don't want it to say Camelot.
I can understand like the stigma they'd be
of course,
concerned about.
And of course we gave right into that. And they meet with our leadership team there, and they meet with the community. And they tell their story, and they're the most resilient group of young people you ever want to meet. They've gone through things that no child should ever have to go through, and they've come out wanting to reverse that cycle. And it takes them a while. Sometimes they make mistakes. When I was 18, I made lots of them. I'm still making them.
We all do.
But
that's true.
Sometimes there's a little amplified, but they recognize that they don't want what happened to them to happen to their peers or their siblings that may be coming behind them. And they work very hard to try to impact the system to reduce abuse and neglect. And a lot of them end up wanting to become social workers or counselors or something that does work with children, and that's just a product of their experience.
Well, I know every year you'll have one or two speak at the kickoff for the golf tournament, and that is just heartwarming, and to hear some of the stories and just how inspirational they are and how motivated, and often, I mean, wanting to pay it forward and talking about how they're going to help, or some that have come to work for Camelot.
Yeah, they do. We always have a few that do work for us, or they work within other partners. They're great because they have that lived experience that we don't have, and we learn the most from them. But they're something else, and they have, like, you get any group of people together. There are ones who are high level. They're very driven to go forward, and there are others that just want to have a good life, and so we do everything we can to support them, anybody who ever wants to be inspired, let us know. You can come meet them and talk to them. They're fantastic.
Sure. No, they are fantastic. So, having or being partially dependent on government funding, I imagine you're up there advocating not only for that, but other issues regarding child welfare. Yeah. How involved are you with that? What does that look like?
It's part of the job.
You're in politics, whether you want to be or not.
Whether you want to be or not. And so every year when legislative session comes around, we have to be up there. One of the challenges we face is legislation that sometimes wants to move services from the community and bring it back to Tallahassee. And so,
but do you provide examples? Say, okay, look how it works. Look how it worked in the past. Potentially, look how it works in other states. Like, what we're doing works. So why change it?
I understand where the state comes from. If you were a state agency and we had your system out to community providers, and you had 17, 18, 20 different systems out there, and the legislature has an expectation that you manage this system, that's difficult. So
I can understand.
There's a normal pressure to want to standardize things across the state because that's easier for you to operate. But for us, that's a danger sign. Because
to your point, every community is different.
Every community is different. That's right. Yeah. And so
it's not one size fits all.
We're challenged by that every now and then, and it's not that's not a criticism of the state. I understand. It's difficult. What we do difficult, and what they do is difficult. But having to the impact that has on a community, and I'll give you an example. Funding. So if Hillsborough County, we reduce the number of children we serve, that's going to create surplus funding that we can then invest back into the system of care and put different services on, increase services, put a new service, whatever it may be, to keep that process going. Another part of Florida may be challenged by a hurricane, by something that happened in the community. There could be, just challenges, or economic challenges, or cost of living challenges, which impact, our families. And so they've had more children come into care and need that funding. So the natural reaction or thing would say, well, we'll move the surplus from one place and move it to another to help support that. And, we don't want anybody else to suffer as a result of that. But what that does is it creates a situation here where, it's a disincentive to, if you do good and you lose the funding to be able to keep the system going, then why do better? We do better, of course, but, that will cause the work that's been done to go back up again. Those are the kinds of things that we're challenged with. Legislation that wants to standardize, and sometimes we understand, sometimes we get it, sometimes we look at the net impact on the community that's going to that is going to hurt that community, and we have to advocate against it.
Well, I think as a legislator, no one runs on. Yeah. Hey, everything's good. Vote for me, and I won't change anything. Right? It's not very inspirational. Nobody gets elected that way, and so people want to enact change and.
We work, like I said a couple of times now, we work with families that are going through the worst part of their lives. And while we are very successful there are negative outcomes that do happen because we can't be with the families all day, all night. And so, things do happen, and those are the things that get the attention. And when you're a legislator, covering a large area, and those kind of rise to the top a little bit. And so, of course, they want to fix it. They want to improve the system. So they go forth and try to work on that. We try to work with them to say, okay, we agree with you. There is a fentanyl problem in this particular part of the county, or there's, back in the day, the opioid issue, and all those kinds of things that are going on. Let's work together to come up with what's the best solution. What we're doing here is working. We have a history of being effective, so let's come up with an idea that will address that we can fix it on the local level, versus trying to come up with a statewide kind
well, you
of
got
answer.
A great track record, so hopefully that carries a little bit of weight.
Does.
I mean, is there any initiatives you're working on for the session next year?
Well, we have a project. I mentioned our post-adoption program. That is a project that is what's called a special project in the legislature. So it is sponsored by Representative Tracy Coster here in Hillsborough.
Great.
So she, is the champion of the funding, and so it's specifically for us, and thankfully it has not been vetoed now for 7 years. And
good, keep it going.
So that's the work. That's a lot of work. Ask organizations and cities. The city of Tampa can answer that. Who've had projects vetoed? It's a lot of work to
no 7-year itch. Let's keep it going
to prevent that from happening. So that is some of the work that we do, and that's always our primary issue that we go into the session with.
So 50 years in, where do you see the next 5 to 10 years going for Camelot?
We've grown a lot these last few years, and we don't operate under growth expectations. It's just that we've been in demand. We've done a good job, and there has been some changes in providers around the state. So we've been asked to step in. We do need to stabilize those a little bit. And we're always looking primarily, I'm looking forward to that community outreach. That's kind of our number one goal over the next 5 years, to grow the brand recognition of Camelot, grow what we do.
You're about to blow up.
Right? Yeah, well, that's right. This is this is it, right?
We
don't
have to do anything. We don't
have to do anything else after this.
Job's done.
But it is things like this to get the word out, not only about us, but just about the need for individuals and companies to support families in the community. And there are great organizations here in the Tampa Bay area that do that, but we want to be able to keep that momentum going because, a community is judged by how it treats its children. And so while the rate of abuse in the Tampa Bay area has come down because of great work by organizations, it's still pretty high, and that's because of the substance abuse issue in this area. So, we have a lot of work to do, and I think that philanthropic individuals and corporations should look to put their time and treasure towards what is it going to do to keep families together. Because when we separate families, whether it's because of hunger or economics or abuse and neglect, whatever it may be, that creates trauma in that family, that creates separation, and it creates a generational effect that takes a while to get over. You really want to see this community prosper, support its families.
Yeah, absolutely. So as the organization has grown, so you took the helm in 2007. By the way, what a challenging time to kind of in the economy and talk about funding. I mean, that wasn't an easy time, I'm sure, to secure funding. But and as you've taken on other organizations and other geographies, I mean, what are some leadership lessons that you've learned along the way and can share with everybody? I
consider myself a benevolent leader. It's kind of my philosophy of just, what can I do to make everyone else successful? And then whatever happens to me, and that is kind of an offshoot from that. So I spend my time asking questions, trying to see what's needed by our programs, our families, the community. And just, I always joked, when I was a kid, I remember firecrackers would say light fuse and get away. And so,
Run.
Yeah. So that's kind of my thing is, what can I do to get everybody going, make sure they have what they need. And I mentioned the asking questions. I think, leaders should ask questions to drive thought and drive, what's the road that's not traveled. It's easy to get complacent, and just is the way we've been doing it. And I like to ask, well, why aren't we doing it this way? And what if we did? I think my team is picked up on that, and they're starting to answer my questions before I ask them. So I need to either change my questions or
No, that's good. You're doing it right.
But I think that's what leaders should do. On top of everything else in terms of making sure that, the agency has resources and it's in the community and those kinds of things. But we are a people-driven company. So, almost all of our funding and expenses goes towards people. We have to have counselors, case managers, and supervisors, all the people that go out and see these families. So, more than 75% of our costs are people. We don't invest in offices for, we have offices for staff, but they're just what they need, because if they're there, they're not seeing their families. So
right. Well, so it has to be an extremely emotional and taxing job.
Yep.
How do you keep those people motivated?
We look at wellness programs. We look at other ways to support them. We try to build teams. It's something that we work on all the time. We probably it's another one of our goals is to better treat our staff. This is a high stress, high turnover business. Imagine seeing a child that's been hurt. Imagine a family that just had their child removed from them, and then the next day you're showing up at their home. They're not quite going to open the door and offer you milk and cookies when you come in. They're going to be a little combative, and that's not their nature. That's not their nature. But they've just been through a horrible thing, and so it takes time to build that trust up, and it is very taxing on the staff, and so we have to do that. And that's another thing we look at our partners with. We have partners that come through and offer different ways to help our staff, whether it be just things to do in the office or bringing food in, or they have their own kind of models and training that they do that can come in and be helpful to our staff. So it's we have to look at that and kind of keep that forefront. And I always have to remind myself that with all the things that go on in operating a $250 million organization, it's full of people that need support.
It's the people. Yeah, it's the people. So if people want to get involved with Camelot, what do they do, Mike?
They can come to our website first and foremost, www.camelotcommunitycare.org. You can learn a lot there. We have different opportunities, ways to get involved in our programs. Or just if you call us on there, we'll come out and talk to you. If you operate a team and you just want your company to learn more about what's happening in the community, we do lots of lunch and learns and come out and talk to folks. And if it's at the end of the day, what came out of that was they know a little bit more about us and a little bit more about how to help families in the community. We've been successful.
Oh, great. So feel free to punt on this question if you don't want to. But while I have you here, you're running for office.
I am.
Why? Why am I? Why would you do that?
So I'm.
You don't get enough politics in your day job.
I'm running for Largo City Commission in the November election, and Largo.
Congratulations, by the way.
Largo is the fourth largest city in the Tampa Bay area, behind Tampa, Clearwater, and St. Pete. So it's 85,000 people, right in the heart of Pinellas County, and I think. It's always been kind of a dream of mine. I've been involved in the city for many, many years. But I think Camelot has kind of fostered that sense of leadership and giving back that I already had. And I've been in this seat now for 17 years, and it's another way of me being able to give back to my community. I think all government should have people like me, but someone who is community minded, who wants to give back. That I bring. I operate an organization that has a large government budget, so I have that experience. But it's a challenge, and it's a way for me to grow on my own myself and my own leadership skills, and most importantly, give back to the community. So we're Camelot focused, and I appreciate the question, but to me, it is a way of giving back to the community, which is what Camelot does, and we foster that in all of our folks. And I hope others in our organization decide to do it and see me as an example, and decide to do it themselves, because what a great way to continue your work of helping the community.
Well, thanks for letting me put you on the spot. Thanks for answering the question. I know, we just need good people in office, and I don't know if people truly appreciate the fact that how much local politics really impacts our lives on the day-to-day. I mean, we get consumed with all the national politics, but it's the boots on the ground. It's people like you, Mike.
That affects, how you live is most affected by your local city government or county government.
Absolutely. Well said. Anything else that we missed that you want to add? We want people to know.
I appreciate the time today, and Camelot, come to our website and learn more about us. And if you're wondering what's happening and what's the state of families in the community, come meet us. Let us come out and talk to your organization. If you are an organization that works with families, partner with us. It doesn't just have to be about child welfare. It could be, hunger. It could be substance abuse. It could be anything that helps a family. We can be right there with you. But most importantly, get involved. I can't say this more to companies, organizations, individuals, governments, whoever it may be. The success of your community is based on how its families are. And if your families are not successful, then your community is going to struggle. And if you think about it from a business point of view, and family challenges are not tied to economic success in that family, whether it be middle class, wealthy, or whatever it may
be.
Everybody has challenges that happen in their family, and from an organization, a company, that's your workforce. And if your workforce is having challenges at home, it's going to impact productivity in the workforce.
Absolutely.
If you, just every bit of our society is impacted by how a family does. So we should do everything we can to support those families, and that's our baseline. Are we keeping kids safe? Are keeping families together? And are they thriving because of the work that we do?
Man, you put a bow on this thing. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming on Money Market. If you have a question or future show idea or would like to be a sponsor, you can send us a message at moneymarket@bankoftampa.com or find us on LinkedIn, X, Facebook, and on Instagram at Bank of Tampa and online at bankoftampa.com. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for subscribing, and we'll see you around in the Money Market.